Hey there, it's Renessa Boley Layne, and welcome to another conversation on creating your perfect work. We are in the middle of our Love and Work Summit. So if you have missed any part of this interview series, go back and catch what you missed. Because whether you are married, single, coupled up, dating, craving love, traumatized, and running as far away from it as you possibly can, there is something for you in this series. And we are not only transforming your love life with yourself, with your partner, with the one to come, all of that good stuff. But we are also leveraging your love life to get highly paid doing work you love. And there is a
Mm.
deep connection between the two, and we are continuing that conversation throughout this series. So today's conversation is about coming alive. It is
Yes.
about resurrecting the juice, the vitality, the sensuality, elements that you may never have had in the first place.
Or
When we
push
start,
down.
when we planned this conversation with Veronica, and I'll introduce her in a moment, I was like, do I have juice? Or juice? So I'm so excited to have this conversation about just kind of resurrecting the juice. And we all have those, what I like to call dark nights of the soul. Veronica will call it the revolt of the soul, and she's going to share a bit of her story in a moment. But we all have those seasons in life where you kind of just have to pull yourself from dark places. And when I've had
Mhm.
those moments, I've often joked, I was like, Renessa, the Calvary's not coming. Like the Calvary's not coming. You got to save yourself. And I'm a devout Christian, so that's kind of my faith baseline. And in those moments, I'll be like, Jesus is not coming on the cross for this one. And while I always believe that, we ride the wings of grace, no matter what you believe, there's grace there. There are those moments. Every woman has to go through their own born again kind of experience, your
Mhm.
own kind of birth canal. And that can be in your career, it could be in your marriage, it could be, in healing situations with your parents and traumas or childhood. This, but everybody's got to go through it. And if you've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you've not had that moment, it's coming. But there's a gift in that if you allow it to happen. And so today's conversation on inner intimacy is kind of like that. Like it's something that often comes after you have that dark night of the soul. And so this conversation is going to be refreshing in so many ways. We're going to talk about falling madly in love with yourself. And most of us have no idea what that even means. But in figuring out what that means, that's how you tap into that juice. That's how you tap into that vitality. That's, you know, again, I say you might not even know it exists, but we're gonna talk about it and then you're gonna find it and you're gonna get a taste of it, and then you're gonna be like, okay, what do I need to do to go get all of that? Right. And so this radiant woman that is sharing the screen with me is none other than Veronica Lynn Clark. And she's amazing. I'm gonna tell you just a little bit about her, and then I'm gonna tell you what I really think about her. It's not stuff, but Veronica she is a sex and intimacy expert. She's an author. She is a social activist, and she has the heart of a renegade. She is founder of Body Temple, the ultimate feminine embodiment training, which is really, really, really cool. And with over 15 years of experience involving trauma and addiction recovery, and intimacy coaching, it was her very own experience with sexual trauma that led to Veronica to this path of personal freedom and helping others to heal their relationships with themselves. She's amazing. You're going to see how amazing she is in this conversation. But what I really admire about her is, Veronica gives women permission for pleasure. And but that permission for pleasure was born out of pain. And again, you'll hear bits of her story, and I'll let her tell it in her own words, but Veronica has done the work. And because she's done the work on herself, she can in integrity help all of us do the work on ourselves. And so you're going to be just so blessed by a conversation with her, to learn from her, to hear her heart. And so with that, Veronica, I just want to welcome you to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
It is such a pleasure to be here. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for introducing me and trusting me with your audience. It's a big honor to be able to speak with women about falling in love with themselves and about
Yes.
intimacy and about the things that we experience and we go through and sometimes don't know how to talk about and don't share.
Yep.
And this my favorite is to normalize this process of becoming more of who we are And in
Yeah.
order to do that, we have to, we break apart, we break open. And so that way, we really can flourish.
Yeah.
So I love it. I'm super happy to be here and can't wait for
Yeah.
our conversation.
And what I'm really excited about in this conversation is, this is a series about love. And oftentimes when we think about love and we think about intimacy, there's always another person on the other side of that.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
what I really am excited about this conversation is that the other person on the side of that is the person in the mirror. It's you, it's me.
Yes.
And the greatest level of intimacy you can have is with yourself. And if you don't have that level of intimacy with yourself, it is virtually impossible to create that in its fullness with somebody else as
Yes.
authentically as we desire it to be. And so that's why this conversation is going to be so awesome. And it doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum of relationship.
Yes.
There is something that you get to take away from this. If you are married, you are going to be even more empowered to have more of what you want in that communion. If you're single, this is going to help you know more about who you are and what you want, and so that you don't settle. And but beyond that, it's about loving your own life and loving the life that you create and loving you. And that's why this is so exciting. So before we get into, your personal story, Veronica, tell us what you mean by falling deeply in love with yourself. Like actually, what is this idea of intimacy? What does it mean? And kind of help us kind of lay a foundation for that.
Sure. Falling in love with yourself is really getting to know you, getting to know and love and appreciate and accept all of the layers of ourselves. Our society has taught us really how to be very codependent and look outside of ourselves for our validation and to substantiate our worth and to make us, feel somehow whole. And it's until once we start to look inside to be able to say, wow, who am I? Who am I really? What do I want? How do I feel? And to really be invested and interested in getting to know ourselves, like this is the beginning process of falling in love.
Yep.
Falling in love doesn't happen right away, by the way.
Mhm.
It doesn't happen right away because the first part is being willing to even look at ourselves and want to bring our attention to ourselves. We're
Mhm.
not used to doing that. We're used to giving to others. We're used to, doing for our children or for our spouses, or we're used to in some way, performing or doing something to get approval outside of ourselves. So we have to get to know ourselves.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, we don't do that to the extent that I'm talking about until we've had some kind of a catastrophic experience happen where we are kind of rocked at our core, right? It shouldn't have to take that, but a lot of times that's what it does take to get our attention. It's
Yeah.
like there's all kinds of signs ahead of time, but once we get there, then it's like, okay, where am I? Who am I? And what do I need? And that begins the one of the most beautiful, juicy relationship.
Mhm.
That's the starting point of it, of getting to know ourselves. So falling in love is really learning how to accept every single part of us,
Mhm.
all the parts, including the parts, especially the parts that we don't like, the things that
Mhm.
we don't want other people to know about us, the things that we shame or judge about ourselves, or that society shames or judges, and that we've noticed within ourselves. Those are the things that we usually we don't want to acknowledge that they exist. We
Mhm.
really rather them just go away,
Mhm.
but nothing just goes away. So in this journey and for my own self, I realized if I really want to love myself, I have to look at all the parts and pieces of me that I haven't been
Wow.
willing to, and have to love those too. I have to
Mhm.
love all those parts. That's when we can really start the full process of love. You
Mhm.
don't just love like the good things, the
Yeah.
part of you that's like, the representative that everybody likes,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Not that, not the part we have fine tuned and honed in on,
Yeah.
all the parts.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
this is yeah, I'll let you go ahead
So
and
you talk about this, and you kind of alluded to it a moment ago. You talk about this revolt of the soul and
Hmm.
how that revolt of the soul leads many to their journey on inner intimacy. What was your
Hmm.
revolt of the soul? Because your story is a really interesting one. So kind of how did you end up in this space doing this work? What was the result revolt of the soul for you?
Hmm. So it's a good question. And I'll say this, as I look back at my life now, I can see that there were many different revolts. There were
Hmm.
these little mini ones, right? There were small ones, but then there was the one biggest catalyst for what I felt like was like my breakthrough,
Yeah.
which looked like a breakdown,
Hmm.
right? It looked like a breakdown, but the breakthrough is the revolt.
Yeah.
And so what happened though for me was I grew up in a family that um, was very hush hush about all of the abuse that was going on, from domestic violence to sexual abuse to verbal abuse, all kinds. But we looked like the perfect family on the outside, right? Nobody knew. So we kept all of that very, very quiet for years. And that had a huge psychological and emotional and physical and all, I mean, you can just imagine, right? And I know I'm not alone in that because this is many people's stories, right?
Hmm.
And so I, and I'll say this too, I did everything that I possibly could to make sure that I kept everything together, right? And I buried all of that. I put all of that someplace and I chose to not be that person anymore. But I also chose then not to look at it and to ignore all those things that happened. I just kind of like, oh, I'm just going to cut myself off from that. And I did a good job for about 10 years. Was married, started to have, children, raised my family and so forth. I was very successful at a very young age. I got into real estate. I bought my first house. I was like 20 years old, and I was in banking and was doing really well. Driven. I was just was able to acquire a lot of wealth at a young age. I also had children, and I had, my husband. So I really created this beautiful fairy tale of a
Yeah.
life that was like very unlike what I grew up in. And I was like on top of this, mountain, like, look at this, look at what I've amassed, look what I've created. And then the crash happened. And and then during that time also the crash happened in the real estate market. And so I'd lost a lot of properties and I,
Hmm.
all the things that happened. But my marriage was also breaking down, had been breaking down, because since we were so young getting together, we really didn't have, we didn't know how to be intimate with each other, not to the depth of true intimacy, which is
Hmm.
true authentic communication.
Yeah.
All of that was a perfect storm for me to lose my identity, which was really a false identity,
Hmm.
which was an identity built on the things that I had acquired
Hmm.
versus an identity that was really built on the truth of who I am. So while all of that felt really scary and was really scary and was like a dark night of the soul, what I also realized was that was my soul's revolution. That was the revolt. That was we're not going down here anymore. This is not who you are. This is not who you are. And it was the biggest breakthrough of my life. It was also the thing that led me to yoga and meditation and mindfulness, because I want to share this. It's very important. For years, I had been pretending to, and I didn't know that I was pretending. So it's not like I was, trying
Yeah.
to,
Fake. Yeah. Yeah.
no, I wasn't doing that. It's just that I just didn't know. But what I was pretending, because I'd done such a good job of, was hiding how I really felt. My mask, my veneer was excellent. You could not, you couldn't see my sadness. You couldn't see my unhappiness. I couldn't see it for myself. So when all of that happened, I couldn't hold it all together anymore. And I remember I told a friend about it, and my friend said, well, just go see somebody and go get some medication or something like that. And it was really tempting. So I actually made the appointment. And I went and I sat in front of a psychiatrist. And I was not there for more than 5 minutes. I didn't even get through my whole story. And he starts writing a prescription and says to me, here, just go get this filled. Here's, I don't remember what it was, whatever the medication was. In that moment, I felt such an offense in my soul. I was so offended. I was so offended that here I am, a mother of 5 children, and he wants to numb me.
Mm-hmm.
This is what my soul heard, right? And that was also another big piece of when I talk about this revolt. It's like paying attention to what was my body saying? Just, I don't have any offense against it. Everybody has different needs. For me, my path was to not take any kind of medication for what I was experiencing, because that was to lead me to yoga and mindfulness and meditation. And that's what I've done to help move through this process so that I could get to know myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because some of those layers would like keep us from knowing ourselves. So all of our pain is an invitation to look deeper and to go more inward and to find out what is our pain trying to tell us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not to stay there and get stuck. It's not to commiserate. It's not to stay in those things. It is to go in there and to listen to your pain as a teacher. You go in as a student, with respect, because that pain is a part of those life experiences that did not get to get voiced. It didn't get to get expressed. And so when you go in there and you get ready to come back out, and then you do something with that. And you make changes in your life. You fall in love with yourself.
So beautiful. It's beautiful. And we all have those places, right? And for many of us, because you're speaking to professional women, they're doing all the things. They're going to school, they're getting the graduate degree, they're going into the to whatever company or corporate, they're starting a business, they're raising families, they're taking care of parents, like they're doing all the things. And many are amassing accolade after accolade and achievement after achievement. And then you get to these places like something's still missing. Like I'm missing something. I'm missing this. Maybe it's you're missing the connection with this other, or I'm missing a connection with myself, or I'm missing this meaningful impact in the marketplace. I'm doing all this crap and none of this means anything. And it's not like, so everyone's going through their own situation. But you are right. The angst is there with a message. If you're willing to not numb it out, dumb it out, run from it, but really lean into it and figure out, okay, spirit, what is it that you're trying to teach me? Because on the other side, it is for your good. It is definitely for your good. But when we talk, you mentioned that a key principle of inner intimacy, of figuring out who you are and all of that, is this idea of sexual energy. And when we cultivate our sexual energy, our world kind of opens up.
Yes.
And again, you're an intimacy and all that coach. And but honestly, that term sexual energy can be triggering. Like there are folks that are listening, like, where's she going with this? No, where's she going with this?
Right. Yeah. I did the same thing in the beginning.
Right?
Yeah.
And we have different associations with sexual energy. Some women on that are listening in, you come from a place where that idea is a lot more repressed. And it could be because of abuse or because of trauma or because of, conditioning, religious conditioning or faith-based conditioning or what have you. Like there's this sense of, there's a suppression around that space. Others they're free. I mean, they're taking the clothes off already. Like, be free. And for some, there's this healthy freedom. And then for others, that freedom is also rooted in pain, or it's rooted in trauma. And so there is this recklessness in that freedom and so that relationship with sexual energy can be interesting, to say the least. And then there's others of us that have no understanding of sexual energy at all. And, it wasn't talked about in the home. It wasn't something that we saw modeled. We don't know if it's good or bad or neutral. And so you kind of just pick up pieces along the way on Cosmopolitan magazine or with friends or in college. You just kind of pick up stuff and you don't know where to even put it because you have no frame of reference for it. So build that foundation for us. What exactly, like, give us a common ground, what sexual energy is, what it's not, and why it's so critical for our success. Because people don't know that those two things are actually connected, and we have a total misunderstanding around that. So
Yeah.
break that down for us.
Yeah. Most people have a misunderstanding. Our parents had a misunderstanding of sexual energy. And what we don't understand, we will repress, we will exploit, we'll go to all kinds of different degrees of exploring it because we don't understand it. What is it that we have here? And so, in simple terms, sexual energy is life force energy. It's creation energy. You think about it. How do we create a child? How do we bring life into being? Right? So if you look, like, all of nature is procreating all the time. This procreation. So I'll talk about some of the 4 different forms of sex too. I'd like to do that.
Oh,
So
that'd be
if
fun.
you can
Okay.
remind me about that,
Yes,
then
I will write it down. I got
write
you.
that down. Write that down. But in simple terms, I'd like you to think about sexual energy as life force energy, that which animates you. That is that impetus to continue to create and to be vibrant in your life. And we have to learn how to use that energy so that we can create a more meaningful and fulfilling life. So we have to know that it's there. We have to know the difference between sex and sexuality. Those are 2 different things. And right now, as I'm speaking, I'm talking specifically about the energy of our sexuality.
Okay.
I also bring in this sense of, like, erotic innocence. So this if you look at, like, cats, little cat, if you ever look at cats, baby cats or anything, they're really, they're connected, they're very sensual. Cats will round the corners and their bodies just move in this very, feminine, energetic kind of a way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Naturally sensual. They're not trying to flirt. They're not trying to come on to anybody. This is that beingness of their energy body.
Mm-hmm.
So I would like you again to really just feel into that which moves through me.
Mm.
When we are rigid, now I was in the corporate world from a very young age, right? 19 years old is when I got into banking. I was a banking center manager at 21. I bought my house at 20. I was a banking center manager. I went on to a district manager. So I moved up. My last position when I was in my career, I was a director at a university. So I got
Okay.
into higher education, and I was rigid. I become a little bit less rigid by the time I got to that position, but I was
You're out of
still
banking. Yeah.
like, you know what I mean? Like, I was like, this is who I am. Like, this is what I do, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just that we are playing in a more masculine dominated kind of a role. And there's certain ways that we move and there's certain ways that we interact. And that when we don't realize what we're doing, we are stifling our life force energy, and we're not nearly as creative as we can be when we allow ourselves to relax even more. Our sexual life force energy moves through our bodies more when we are relaxed. I'd like you to think about a river. When that river is just flowing, when it's unencumbered with debris that's maybe someone has put in there, people, want to go fishing and then they leave their
Yep.
trash in there. Think about that, like our original state of sexuality coming into this earth as, newborn babies, just alive and vibrant and laughing and effervescent. And things just start to kind of get in the way and get blocked in life's experiences and so forth. And so some of that flow,
Yeah.
it's impeded.
Mm.
So what I really want people to understand is sexual energy is natural. It is our natural, it's a natural flowing state of life that wants to just move through us. How you can direct your sexual energy is also with your breath. Your breath is the vehicle for your life force energy. So we're not talking about anything that is, bad or good, even for that matter. It just is.
Mm-hmm.
It's very natural. Now, how we use our sexuality, though, is really dependent upon what our beliefs are.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, I would have never told you that. I mean, even 10, 15, even 10 years ago, I would have never said, I'm going to be a sex and intimacy expert, that I'm going to even have the audacity to talk about this. Because, for one, a lot of people don't know this. I went to ministry training school for like a year
Mm.
because I was like, I'm going to be a minister. I'm going to be a pastor. I'm not going to talk, I didn't know. And I was so afraid to go into that cave of sexuality. I didn't even tell my husband about my sexual trauma because I didn't even tell him, because there was so much shame around that I was like, I am not talking about it. So that also created so many blocks inside of me. So I never ever thought that I would be talking about this. Well, once I realized that since I'm ignoring since I'm ignoring this, there must be something there. I was daring enough to know, and I'd already went through enough to know that if there's something that I'm hiding from myself, or I'm keeping from myself, or I'm not exploring, there's something behind that door worthy of exploring.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I invite everybody to do.
Mm-hmm.
Explore with curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what are behind some of my beliefs about my sexual energy?
Mm-hmm.
What's entangled in the way that I carry myself? Am I judging another person when they appear to be more sexual, or when they're talking about these things? Like, where are my blocks?
Mm-hmm.
Because once we can start to identify our blocks, then we can start to get even more curious about what may be blocking that flow of life force energy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pause there. Go ahead. Ask me a
Right.
question.
It's so interesting because it's a difficult conversation to even dive into
Mhm.
until you address your reaction to it, right?
Mhm.
Because I think when we talk about sexual energy, and in a moment, I want you to talk about the connection between your sexual energy and even how you've blossomed in your work, how your career, business, all of that, because that's tied into
Mhm.
sexual energy. We're actually going to have a deeper conversation around that in another interview around the correlation. But I want you to talk about that because you can't even go there until because the big giant stop sign comes up for lots of people. Because when you say sexual energy, you're like in someone's mind, it's sexual intercourse.
Yeah, you
And
think they're
and as
trying to do something. You're trying to have sex, or you're trying to do, and it's not that at all.
and so even when you make the comment around rigidity,
Mhm.
and how rigid of a woman are you? And the rigidity in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
There's no judgment around that. But when you said that, I was like, not like
Mhm.
I've certainly loosened up a lot over the years, but there was a time when it was like, I mean, there are some real serious boxes in my life. And certainly that impedes your level of adventure and enthusiasm and excitement and flow and all those things that are inherently feminine and
Yes.
inherently magnetic and inherently attractive. Like just even when you talked about the cats and the freedom and the movement and all of that, it's like you gotta go to a retreat to do all of that. On the day to day, our lives feel so contained.
Yeah.
And then you wonder why you're burned out and you wonder why you don't feel attractive. And and attraction has nothing to do with what your hair is and all that. Like there's elements to that. Sure, go paint it up or whatever. But there is such an inner glow that comes and you know it when you see it. Like
Yes.
when you see folks that radiate that, you know it. And
Yes.
it'll either be attractive to you or you'll get jealous and it'll make you insecure. Like, but you go through a reaction to that magnetism,
Hmm.
right? And so that's sexual energy.
Yeah.
And that's what's attractive. So when women are in the dating process and they're like, oh, I'm trying to, da da da, it's not about what you're putting on. It's about this what she's talking about. And we're going
Yes.
to talk about strategies to be able to enhance their sexual energy, but we first have to get to this idea of people even being willing to embrace this concept
Yes.
because it's so biologically rooted in who you are, and especially especially as women, when it is suppressed and it is bogged down and it is all of that, there's a light that goes out. And then
Yes.
that light shows out in the marketplace, in your leadership, with your team, with your staff. It shows at an interview. It shows it, it's not just relegated to the intimate parts of your home. And so
Mm-mm.
then as I think about marriage and with my you're looking for a partner to please you. And yeah, it's like, but what energy are you bringing to the table? Where's your own sense of such that
Absolutely.
someone is literally falling over themselves for you because of how you radiate, independent of their mood or where they're coming from. And so it's such a powerful thing. But I am really, because I want you to make that connection for people about sexual energy and its impact in other aspects of your life beyond like intercourse and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. Well, you have said
Yeah, I was
so.
like, I kind of said it.
Well, you just said there's so many pieces there that you talked about, from the rigidity to how it affects your body. So I want to address a few different things.
Yeah,
I'm going to start with the rigidity part. And I will say the rigidity is not helpful. It's not helpful. It is a protection.
yeah.
Protection is helpful. We need protection. And a lot of times we have formed protection at a very young age and we didn't realize it. And then that protection, we didn't know that we didn't need that protection anymore because we've developed and we've matured. And yet it turns into a form of rigidity and it gets into our body and it gets into our gait and the way that
Yep.
we walk and the way that we communicate and that forms our jaws in certain ways. And there becomes this fixed sense of who we are.
Yeah.
And then our identity also starts to get wrapped up in that, right?
Yeah.
Because then in many ways, and when I mention things like masculine and feminine energy, I'm not talking about male or female. I'm not talking about if you're in a man body or in a woman body. I'm saying that in all of nature, there are masculine aspects or yang aspects, and then there's feminine aspects, which are more like yin, slower,
Mhm.
darker, sun and the moon, right? Just these polarities.
Yeah.
But a lot of times, and we're just talking about women right now, the energy of a rigid woman is more in her masculine.
Yeah.
And so the masculine is like a mountain, like a rock, right? It's the stability, it's steadiness. But the feminine energy, our sexual energy, is that of flow and of life force.
Mhm.
And so we need that life force so that we can be juicy in our life, so we are excited about life. Our sexual energy is an invitation for us to live more wide open and to be more vibrant in our life and to get out of these little small boxes out,
Mhm.
because we're so, if I behave this way, then this is the result that I get. And it's safe for me and I know how to act and I know what I'm going to get. A plus B equals C. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Our, our sexual energy is an invitation to go right into that deep, dark mystery of the unknown. It is an invitation when we start to really expand our life force to, to go beyond our limited mind and our way of thinking. And when we do that, we certainly become more attractive.
Absolutely.
We are more in our turn on because life is so exciting and the way that we see things are different. Your business changes.
Yeah.
You are going to magnetize more clients. You know what? You're more, you, even the way that you mother your children will be
Mm.
different.
Yeah.
You see, because where else are your children going to be able to really see that feminine embodiment? But if women are afraid of their sexuality, we cut off some of our gifts and our beauty that we have to be able to bring more life to life. Life begets
Yeah.
more life.
Yeah.
You get to, with your when you are in your magnetism and you're in your beauty, which is further brought forth because you are allowing sexual life force energy to move through
Yeah.
you. right? Your skin is better. You have
Mm,
more life in you. You have more life in your eyes. I really want people to really think about sexual energy as life force energy.
mhm,
I really, really, because, but I'm still, it's still important for us to say sexual energy because there's so much stigma and taboo around it that we have to reclaim that word and bring it to the light
mhm.
and bring it to the light of our love and our consciousness. Because until we do that, this is me kind of getting on my soapbox here. Until we do that, that's why all of these horrible things, exploitation, abuse of children, of all kinds, all kinds of rape, all of the things like that continue to go on in that realm of sexuality because we're afraid to talk about it and we're afraid to bring it to the light. But the more of us that start to say, you know what, this is this is a natural resource, like
Mhm.
water is a natural resource.
Yeah.
This is a natural resource that revivifies me. This does not mean that I have to have sex. Let me tell you, I I have practiced celibacy for more of my adult life than I have not. And I am a very sexual person. And that doesn't even mean that I'm always self-pleasuring. It means that we can use our life force energy in so many different ways in our life. I use it in my business. I use it I use it so that I can connect more with women when I'm coaching with them or with couples. My energy allows me to feel more love because more life comes and flows through me. I'm healthy. I very, very rarely get sick. And if I do, it is so quick. I don't take medications. And and I don't feel like I'm special. I don't feel like I'm some I am special and I'm not special in that that is unique just to me.
Yeah.
I'm special because I said, you know what? For someone who, so if I won't even begin to even get into my sexual history as far as the depth of abuse that I experienced, but it was more significant than people would probably like. Most people can't even handle the amount, but that it's like whatever was used against. I'm like, I can turn all that around. I turned all that around and I was willing to be able to go into that dark cave and find the jewels, find my joy for
Yeah.
my body, for my health. That's where my vitality was. When we cut ourselves off, if I kept myself cut off from my sexuality and ignored that part of me, even if I just had sex, even if people still have sex, or like I still have sex with people, I still have have my husband, I have sex or whatever. That does not mean your sexual energy is really dialed in. The
Mhm,
act of sex, you may be tapping into that. You're tapping into your sexual energy, but that is such a small part of it.
mhm,
So just to kind of recap, I want to emphasize the juiciness. Think of like water. Where there's
mhm,
more water, where there's more flow, there's more life. And you
mhm,
can't fake this.
mhm,
This is not about being sexy. This is not about being wearing sexy clothes or doing anything. This is about
mhm.
being, and also being more in your softness.
Mhm. Let's
This,
talk about that. I think this is great. This is a great segue because for many folks they're hearing it and it's like I get it, sort of, kind of, maybe I want some of that, but what does that mean, like, practically? So let's talk about, now that we've kind of opened the door to this whole idea of sexual energy, what are ways in which women can increase their sexual energy? And we've had, just transparently, Veronica and I've had some conversations before, so she said some really great things, and I'm like, oh, you gotta say that again.
you know,
So I want to talk about some of this. So some of this you can go right to, and it's going to make some folks uncomfortable in a good way, and then others is going to be really benign, and you can just take on that strategy or what have you. But one of the things that you say, and I'll just pull kind of the ones that really stood out to me, and for the interest of time, if we don't get to all of them, it'll be okay. But one of the things that you said as just a point of fact is that your partner is not responsible for your sexual pleasure. Please talk about that, because we're talking about sexual energy here. We're talking about sexual pleasure. Like, this is They just need
We
energy.
like pleasure. Talk about you. Yeah, your partner is not responsible for your
That
toxic.
people are getting served here because that's, you know, that's important. And so, but when you said it, I was like, oh, that point really hits home. Tell us about that.
Yeah, you are responsible for your pleasure. We are each responsible for our pleasure. We need to know what we like, how we want to be touched, how we want to be made love to. We're responsible for our orgasm and being able to move our energy through our body. If we're just waiting for our partner to get us, turned on, to get us off to any of those things, we are missing that co-creative opportunity to really elevate ourselves and our lover, you
Mhm.
know? And so so your pleasure, first of all, for women to even start to know, what do I want? What do I like? How do I want to be touched? You've got to touch yourself. You've got to learn how to touch your own body. What do I like? Can I even ask for what I like? Do I know what I want? Do I feel comfortable asking for it? And then also maybe teaching my partner how to pleasure me, inviting him into more of an exploration,
Mhm.
you know.
And it's interesting because there's a tremendous amount of agency that comes with that. And again, depending on where you come from in terms of your perspective on sex and whether it was appropriate or whether it's not, because some women go into marriage or they go into whatever and they think that somehow either it's supposed to just figure itself out, like by
Yeah,
combustion, and or it is the other person's responsibility to figure that out for me.
yeah,
And so imagine the level of courage and vulnerability and all of that that's required for you to even understand what you like. And that like could be I like to be touched on my shoulder, I like to be kissed on the back, or I like to be kissed on the front, or I like to stand on, like, to even figure out what you like
yes,
and be okay with this is what I want. And this, because many folks end up in situations on a regular basis, intimately, that they're like, this is not doing nothing for me. When is this over? Oh my God. And it's so, and so then it becomes this obligation and it's chore. And so when we talk about sexual energy and life force and vitality, it's gone. Because in the
yes,
space that's supposed to be most rejuvenating in the most intimate way, you don't even look forward to it because it's not. But then whose responsibility is that? Not
yeah.
that person's, not the
No,
other person's. Yours.
well, and this might make a couple people a little uncomfortable, so just hold here
And
for a second.
we're gonna tie this to you working
We're
with
going to
me.
tie it all together. All of it's important. But I'm going to say this goes back to falling deeply in love with yourself. Your pleasure is connected to your ability to love yourself, right? The more you love yourself and accept yourself, the more pleasure you're going to have because you're going to be able to be more explorative and more creative. One of the things that I encourage my clients to do, and that I even do like in Body Temple, is look at yourself. I'm going to call it your yoni. Your yoni is your vagina, and that means your sacred garden. So look at your own yoni in the mirror and open her and look and see, what does she look like? What are the colors? And have a dialogue with yourself. What do you want? I haven't communicated with you for a while. What would you like? How would you like to be touched? How often would you like to be touched? You want to be touched more often? What kind of touch? So I'm talking like really beautiful, intentional communication with this life, this portal that gives life to look. And you can do this with your partner also after I say, after you've done this for yourself. So you get to have this exploration. And when we touch and we're using sexual energy, you can use this sensual touch without it being, you know, like you don't have to masturbate. You can. I think it's beautiful. But if that's too much for some people right away, just softly touching your thighs, touching the inside, touching the outside, touching like you would love, like your lover to touch you. When I was going through this exploration, and although I have 5 children, my husband and I did not have a very sexual relationship. And I had never even looked at myself, right? So there was no way I was going to let him look. And like, this is how closed down and shut down I was. And so it was like, I took my time, just layer by layer by layer, slowly looking, exploring, understanding myself. And I cultivated that lover within myself. If I'm my own lover, how do I want to be touched? And that's going to change from day to day, perhaps moment to moment, as you're going through this awakening of your sexual energy. But these are just different ways. And then the more you play and the more you just like let yourself have fun, your pleasure increases because you're not taking yourself so seriously. You're not being so hard on yourself. You're not being so rigid. You become so much more of a fun lover, even for your partner, because there's more permission for exploration and for play. Does this make sense?
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. But think about this. This, I think, for many of us, present company included, it's a very uncomfortable, it's enticing and yet it's super uncomfortable. But there's a freedom that also comes with that. And there is a certain level of agency that comes with you understanding what pleases you. And when you're able to do that in one of the most vulnerable aspects of your life, imagine the imagine how that opens you up in the marketplace to
Yeah,
then be able to go and say, this is what I want in my job. This is not what I want in my job. This is what I want on this team. This is
exactly.
not what I'm willing to tolerate in this culture or environment or whatever. The level of strength of presence that that provides, because in the most insecure and vulnerable parts of your life, you're able to say, this is who I am, this is what I want, and this is how I want to experience my world. There's a real parallel. So when she's
She's a
talking
huge
about rigidity
parallel.
and all that, as rigid as you might be in the intimate space, just as rigid in the marketplace.
Yes.
It
You
might
just
be more
may not see it.
acceptable, it might look different, and it
Right.
might present different, but it's still the same box,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so this, hopefully, the conversation begins to help you help us, not because I'm like, what you saying? But hopefully the conversation begins to, for some of you, you're like, yeah. And for others, it's literally like there's a pit in your stomach happening because there's an invitation to go to such an uncomfortable place. But there's something else I want to hit to a couple places that you say. One of them I love, and I think is so important. You said learn how to fully soften and learn the art of surrender. And you've been
Mm-hmm.
talking about rigidity a little bit, but let's talk about that softening because that softening, oh my gosh, just even the words evoke a level of just opening that I think is so powerful in every aspect of our lives that we don't ever tie to sexual energy.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I'll invite you, even in this moment, notice your shoulders. It's like you can notice in your own body, right? How do I feel in this moment? What's happening, even in my pelvic floor or in my belly? It's starting this softness when we want to increase our receptivity to life, then we have to start relaxing our bodies more.
Mm,
We relax our jaw, we relax our pelvic floor. We relax that state of always being ready, right?
mm,
Ready to take action. The muscles are contracted and engaged. This what's interesting is that because you can still be in your softness and you're still very present and very aware.
yeah.
You can actually be even more aware because you're more receptive. So you can pick up on the subtleties
Hmm.
and we have less of an agenda, right? Because it's like when we're more in our rigid state, we're like more hyper vigilant, ready for
Yeah.
something. Do this. This is letting that go. This is the surrendering and trusting that I can relax.
Yeah.
There's no danger.
Hmm.
There's no danger here. I don't have to be in this vigilant state.
Yeah.
I get to soften. And when we soften, we become more receptive. When we're more receptive, life is moving through us more. This
Yeah.
life force energy,
Yeah.
moment to moment, I'll tell you, um, starting to be aware of how you hold the steering column,
Yeah.
how you wash the dishes, how you do anything in those in between spaces of your life, because we
Yeah.
are in those in between spaces more often than not.
Yeah.
And that is really where we get to see ourselves
Yep.
behind the veil when we're not, you know, in performance or even in front of people. And I don't mean that in a condescending way. I'm just
Yeah.
saying sometimes we're doing a thing,
Mm-hmm.
and so you really, really get to see yourself. And those are the moments where it's so important to get even more relaxed. Am I rushing? Slow it down a little bit, just
Yep.
even a little. Am I holding on to this really tight?
Yep.
How do I feel while I'm doing a thing? How do I
Mm-hmm.
feel while I'm putting my makeup on or brush my hair or putting my clothes on? When I'm folding my clothes or I'm making my bed, how am I doing those things?
Yeah.
So the invitation is to slow down a little bit more, to enjoy it, to enjoy folding, feeling the terry cloth in your hands. Like enjoy the beauty of being able to make up your bed. I know those may seem like I'm in a hurry, I'm doing whatever, but this is a mindset. The
Yep.
softening is not only in your body, it is also in your mind, because that has a direct influence on your energetic state.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what's so great about this, though, is that that softening is such an attractive quality. It's
Mm-hmm.
a very feminine quality. Like you don't look at men and be like, "Oh, could you soften?" Like you actually, that doesn't make you feel very safe. I want you to be
It
real.
doesn't.
I want
That's
you to be
right.
real rigid,
It's like you need the right.
immovable.
The
Because
feminine needs that masculine to,
right.
you know,
And
to
so when
hold
you think about
present.
polarity, and
Mhm.
attraction happens because of polarity. You have
Yes.
a feminine, you have a masculine, you have those opposites. There's a polarity that's there. And the
Mhm.
challenge in many of our relationships, that it's an area that I've had to grow in, is that in my relationship, I come from a very masculine place. I'm an
Yes.
only child. I'm a military kid. I was raised that you've got to take care of yourself. You got to achieve. You got to blah, 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 blah. And I didn't have role models that were feminine.
Yeah.
Like, yes, we had women in my life, but they were all, everybody's, the woman of the house and all of that kind of stuff. And so I didn't know how to be soft. I was bullied as a young woman, very successful, but bullied. And so I had all kinds of guards up around relationships. And so I showed up very rigid, very guarded, not soft. I looked at softness as weakness. I looked at softness as really inefficient use of time, like it
Mhm.
just, but not recognizing that when, especially if you're trying to think about relationship or dating or whatever, your softness makes a man feel safe.
Yes.
It makes him
Yes.
feel, because that's where he's able to, let himself go.
Yeah.
And so but as high achieving women, we think, well, I got to match you. I got to earn as much
I
or
thought I
more.
could be,
You know,
I
I
thought I
gotta,
could be a bad man better than my husband. Are you kidding? I'm
and
like,
so recognizing that softness, which is such an intangible quality, is so attractive. Most of us do not have it.
mhm.
Most of us are walking around with very high levels of masculinity in terms of how we operate. And so
Mhm.
then we wonder why we are so dissatisfied, because
Mhm.
we're operating in a space that, for many of us, there's some women who are more masculine in how they operate, or they're more masculine at their core, and so
Yeah.
it's a natural place for them to be. For a lot of women, you're feminine at your core, but you operate in a very masculine place. So you
Mhm.
look the part, but
Mhm.
in terms of how you think, how you behave, how you act, how you react, your ability to relax, all of those things, very masculine. And so therefore you got a masculine man who is
Mhm.
looking at a woman who's operating in the masculine, that attraction doesn't happen. And then you think it's
Sure.
because you got the wrong outfit on or you got too much weight. And it's not that.
Nope.
It's the energy,
Yes.
right? And even in the marketplace, you can be a very feminine woman and you can have this softness, and you got to know your numbers, you got to know you be in your game, but
Yes.
you can show up in a space that creates so much safety for a team
Mhm.
because of the energy that you bring to it.
So I would like to speak to that. And so this is important, especially because in business, we, I know I have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace before, and there can be all kind, there's these ways in which we want to make sure we keep our sexual energy outside of the
Yeah.
place because it's not safe. Whether it's because competition, we've got to be able to demonstrate our ability, our performance by behaving in certain ways. And so there's no space for the feminine energy,
Mm-hmm.
right? Or because we feel like we may be harassed. However, okay, so I understand why there is fear in talking about sexuality or bringing that into the workplace. Now, this is important is we're talking about the feminine within ourselves, but it's also important to cultivate that the inner masculine. So this is
Mm,
inner marriage. The inner intimacy is an understanding of the inner marriage within ourselves. So if I can create my own safety, I can create my own safety for myself. I can have my own boundaries. I can speak up for myself. I can ask for what I want, all these things. This is important. This is the masculine aspects of us. So we
yeah.
have that, right? A lot of us do have that, but it might be like extreme
Mm-hmm.
masculine, as we've talked about. So the invitation isn't to leave that.
Mm-hmm.
And as we soften, it's to be able to hold both, to know
Mm-hmm.
that I can walk into the boardroom in my sexual energy without trying to spill it onto anybody. The sexual energy isn't for somebody else. The sexual energy is for me. It's for me to have my energy moving through my body. It's not because I need to go in there and say anything in a specific different way. People know that I'm in my sexual energy or anything like that. It is such a full recalibration of our own internal being that people will naturally begin to see the radiance and the difference, but not just in our being, but in our creative potential increases. And so the ideas that we start to bring to the table are much more innovative than the regurgitated kind of ideas. Let's try this a different kind of way, but it's the same thing. We have access to so much more creative potential when we are in our flow. So person everybody's person with cultivating and really awakening and inviting their sexual energy in is going to be a different journey. Everyone's going to have a unique and different journey.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so people have to even know, well, what's the benefit? Why am I even going to do this in the first place? Well, because your life is going to be better. That's why. Because your life is going to be better. And every single thing in your life is going to be better when you are choosing to be more alive and vibrant. And initially, you don't even have to worry about, well, how is it going to be? Like, what is going to happen? How am I going to do that? Don't worry about what the outcome is going to be. Know that when you have more life in you, life just gets better and better. Life begets more life.
Mm-hmm.
So start to trust this energy, trust that you are creative by nature,
Mm-hmm.
and trust that as you start to soften and relax, we start to change the world with our ideas. With we're not stressed out
Mm-hmm.
so much. We're not depleting ourselves because we're running on empty, because we're putting so much extra pressure on our brain, on our hearts. Because when we're trying to get everything else, if I'm focusing just on my heart, I'm just focusing on my brain, there's so much pressure there. People can't sleep at night, stressed out, they're waking up, eating more, cortisol levels all out of
Yep.
whack. That's the pandemic. So, drop down into the darker place, right? The scarier place. It's like down in right beneath our navel point, our sacral center. This is the place where that life force energy just wants to be more cultivated and allowed to move through you,
Yep.
you know?
I love it. We just keep talking, but there's one thing I want to note here, because it is a way of being. And even as I'm listening in on this conversation, I am cognizant. I'm like, okay, how tight is my jaw? How, like, I actually step into my body as you've been talking, and recognize how much tension is at a certain place. That is just, and I'm like, it's probably been there for months, and that same, but not even being aware of how much you hold.
Yeah.
And so, how we respond in our capacity and our ability to even hold more as a container isn't about more time, and it's not about more whatever. It's about what she's talking about. And one of the things you mentioned was this idea of having a daily self care, not self care, daily self pleasure practice.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful because I think for lots of us, pleasure is like once every other week, or it's on a one Sunday a month. I have my me time, and
Yeah.
it's like, really, like
Mhm.
you live every day. And so, if
Yes.
something else comes out of this conversation, if you take stock of how you experience the day, just regularly, like the emotions that surge through your body, the level of tension versus relaxation that's in your body, the level of absolute delight that you experience, like on a regular basis, like if you audited that.
Yeah.
And if it's not really like, wow, this is great, change. And
Yes.
circumstances have to change. It's this.
Yes.
And the conversation is not going to fix it for you. But my hope is that the conversation makes you aware that there's a whole other way to live.
Yes.
And that whole other way to live, it starts with you. It doesn't start with, if you're trying to track somebody else, trying to get a husband on board, oh, it's not going to work. It's
Yeah.
not for you. But it starts with you. It's a magnetism that changes the stuff that's on the outside. So if nothing else happens, I hope you walk away and be like, there's something more, and I need to figure out what the more is and how to do it. You have, because I want to be mindful of time because we are
Yeah.
probably well over time,
Yeah.
but you have a couple of resource recommendations,
Yes.
and you also have a free gift for the audience as well. So I want to make sure, if this conversation resonated with you, I want you to take her up on her offer. Get into her ecosystem, get her emails, consume her content, go to a retreat, do whatever.
Yeah.
Because this is a journey. It's not a one-time fix, but it is an awakening and an opening to figure out how to live your life with so much more pleasure and openness and relaxation and satiation and all of those really, really yummy emotions that women are supposed to feel. And I'll be the first one to say, if you need to figure out where you belong in the marketplace and how to get paid for it and all that, I'm your jam. If you need to figure out how to really enjoy the sensory of life, right over here. This is
Mhm.
where you go to
I
get
think
that.
you're getting it though. You got it.
So,
You got this.
you know, you know that I did this interview series for you. I did this interview
All day, every day.
series folks the resources, and then I want you to explain what the free gift is so that we make sure that people are supported beyond this. And I hope that it's opened a gateway for you to begin to think about, oh my gosh, how much better can I feel? And if we feel better, we create more, we are more innovative, we're more attractive, we're more magnetic. It changes love life, it changes career, it changes businesses, and it's done with so much more ease and flow. And that's how women are supposed to experience it. I'm not supposed to climb the same mountain as my husband. I'm not supposed to jump. It's not, but I've gotten really good at being bad at being a man.
Mhm.
So,
Well,
what is the
I'm glad to
recommendation?
hear that. That's wonderful. That's great news. You're starting to let that go, huh? I
All
just
right. So,
recap because I've got some resources here I want to share. And I want to recap what you said though. It is in the in-between spaces. So right now, even people listening, and immediately you can start being more aware of everything that you're doing and soften in those moments. And that is already going to start inviting more of your life force energy to start moving through your body. Take more breaths, move at a slightly slower pace. Trust that that it is actually saving time, that it is an efficient use of your time. I loved it when you said that.
Mhm.
But no, truly, slow down a little bit. Slow
And try
down.
sleeping naked too. That actually
Oh my
is
gosh.
it's
Sleep
really
naked. Okay, okay. Sleep naked. Buy a robe, a beautiful, I have so many robes. Buy some beautiful silky robes, long robes, whatever kind of robes that you like. Walk around in your robes. You know, when you're making your morning cup of coffee or tea in the evenings, wear your robes. Wear beautiful things around the house, you know, like, and make sure you put beautiful things around, flowers and just things that really make you feel more in your beauty and your feminine. Um, eat eat fruit, eat fresh fruit and strawberries and watermelons and things that are like juicy and wet, because this is also really good for your body and for your juiciness of your yoni, you know, because remember, where there's more water, well, there's more moisture, there's more life. Okay, so eat that, feel good with that, eat peaches, let the juice drip down your face a little bit, let that feel good and sensual for you. And you know, this may sound crazy, but invite your, if you have children, let them also do that, right? Enjoy, have fun, make, you don't have to eat the fruit sensual in front of them, but let it be fun for them to see that, oh, we don't have to do everything so nice and neat. I can let the juice run down my face. We get to laugh about this. This starts to expand their ability to flow with life with more
yeah.
creativity too. Okay, so be really mindful of that. Oh, there is something else. So your sexual energy is your creative life force energy. So when you feel really turned on and maybe you feel really horny or aroused or something, start writing, start dancing, sing,
Mm,
go paint, do something, create something, use your turn on to create and bring something forward. Massage your breast, massage your nipples, squeeze your nipples, roll your nipples around in your fingers, like
y'all
just
thought this interview was ending. I think it started.
just got started. Look, okay. I was trying to be all nice and polite. Listen, start rubbing on your breast every single day. You got to do that, not just for the checking for lumps. You do it for pleasure. You have these two arc lines, nipple to nipple and ear to ear. And we have so much energy, women, that we cultivate here. So massage yourself, enjoy. When you take baths, make sure that don't rush through, even if you're only taking a 5-minute shower or something. Still do it like, thank you, body. I love you, body. Thank you. You have this precious vessel here. Treat it as such. Touch your body. Your body needs your attention. It needs your softness and your care because it's going to respond accordingly. So that is a big resource. Make sure that you do that. I love you, body. Thank you, body. You feel so good. It feels so good to touch you. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, you smell so good. Okay, things like that. It's gonna be really helpful. Um, OMGS is a fantastic website. Like, it's a really good website. They have lots of videos. They've got tons of libraries on all kinds of different topics related to sexual, like sexual techniques, you know, self-pleasuring techniques, but also just information about anatomy, like how your body works, you know, and all kinds of different things. It's priceless. And also some fun things that you can even use with your partner, you know, just to kind of juice things up. But I can help you with that too, because I coach couples on that kind of stuff and women. So but if you just need a quick resource or something like that, it's a nice resource. The book Pussy. Everyone, so there's two books. Pussy it's Mama Gina. She's so funny. Pussy's a good book, and that's reclamation. It's reclaiming that word pussy, because how many people feel really uncomfortable saying that word, right? There's another book, it's called Vagina. And this really talks about, this is much more like science-based and more like so help you understand how our vagina and our orgasms are deeply connected to our nervous system, to our
Mm,
stress levels. Like, this is such a good and very, very practical book. I am actually listening to it again. I have the book, but I also am listening to it on Audible. And so this is a great one. Woman's Anatomy. These are more anatomy books, but it's like, oh, my body does this. It's just really interesting. And Open Her, I just wrote down a few of them. Open Her is really wonderful also. If you don't like to read a lot, then put these things on Audible. And then Margot Anand, she's such a beautiful teacher. She's, has worked with, she was studied with Osho and lived with him with the ashrams for a long time. Is a fantastic tantric teacher. And so I had the pleasure of also studying with her. She has some really beautiful, deep books on sexuality and sensuality. There's one more book that I do want to mention also. And for some reason, oh yes, ladies, The Queen's Code.
I hadn't heard that one.
No, this is different actually. This is really more about this is really helpful to help us to realize how could I possibly be emasculating men or my husband or my partner.
Mm.
Because, when we are in our sweetness and in our juice, we can really help elevate a man to a whole new level. We can help him to reach higher levels of wealth. We help ourselves to reach higher levels of wealth. We can also bring a man's energy down. And so this book, I think, is really helpful in being a little guide also for how am I doing that? Am I helping grow or bringing my man down? So I wish I had when I was married, and all these books. And my book is amazing, by the way. I have to plug this.
Yeah.
My book, To Be Aligned.
Absolutely. 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 So what we want to make sure that people are able to get into your ecosystem. So thank you for all of these resources. And if something resonates with you guys, just get it. Just, I mean, again, hopefully this conversation has opened you up. It's a longer interview than we typically have. But I think it is so important. And clearly people needed to hear it, and it happened exactly as it needed to happen. And so my hope is that you have been blessed and challenged and intrigued and all of that by it. We want to make sure that folks can stay connected to you.
Yes.
So she's going to share what her free gift is. It's somewhere on this page. I think it's usually at the bottom of the video. You'll see a place to enter your name and your email address, and or there will be a link for you to go straight to where you need to go to do that. Yeah, it'll be a link. It'll be a link. So you're going to go straight to that link and tell folks what they are going to enjoy from you.
Yeah. I have a group coaching session that I am inviting them into. They'd like to join. And we will be going through the 8 desires in my book. And the 8 desires have to do with your sexuality, your recreation, your life, all of these things. So we'll have a 90-minute deep dive and talk about all kinds of different things. It's going to be so much fun. We'll also have some little breakouts and some one-on-one time with me. But specifically, we'll be working on the 8 desires so we can really level up your life when it comes to your sexual energy and your play and your recreation, how that connects to your money, to your business, to every other area in your life.
Yeah. Please take advantage when you have an opportunity where you get an experience with someone and you get that experience for free. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I was gonna say
no-brainer.
Yeah.
And so it's a very, very generous offer. And it's just a very generous offer. So again, if this content has resonated with you, if it has just created or ignited a spark of some kind or a curiosity of some kind, then Veronica is such a safe space to be able to explore that. And so when I hear testimonials of people that have worked with her, consistently people talk about how safe he is and what a safe experience she creates. And I think that is such an honorable thing to say about someone else. And so if this resonates, please do take advantage. I hope the conversation has been a blessing to you. Thank you, Veronica, for sharing your life force with all of us. And we're so delighted to have you. So everybody, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.